She liked this guy and she trusted him. And, unfortunately, it was her demise.
According to the Amador County Sheriff's and CDCR, at some point in the middle of the night during their November visit, Brinson called the prison staff to say Stephanie passed out. 2 weeks later, her family was told something seemed suspicious about the case.
I'm going to break down this sad and tragic situation that took place in November of 2024, where a woman was strangled while conducting a conjugal visit with her 4-time convicted murderer husband in a California prison. And make sure you stick around to the end because this case only gets worse because sadly, this isn't the only time that a situation like that has happened within the last year. Check it out.
Your reporter, Madison Keevy, has the woman's family's plea to the prison make changes and give them answers.
Love their grandchildren more than anything. And that's what hurts the most is because we got some that's about 3 years old. They don't know, what's going on. It's hard to explain that to them.
Stephanie Brinson wore many hats: grandmother, mom, a volunteer who gave back to her community.
It really hurt. She was a very loving person to a fault. She didn't care what your past was. She saw the good in everybody.
This case is already sad, but you think about the dynamic of this woman finding love while dealing with an inmate, and not just any inmate, but a 4-time convicted murderer serving 4 consecutive life sentences. And this is the guy she chooses to hook up with. It's really sad. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to find the good in people, especially for those of us who are in Christ, those of us who are Christians. But there is such a thing as being naive and being careful because there are people out there who are manipulative, who will take advantage of situations. And I don't know the details of their case. I don't know what was going on. I don't know whether she met him in prison. I think most of the details kind of point in that direction. But you have to take into consideration that there was a older woman who he probably was able to convince her that he's seeking to be a godly man and he's trying to live right and do right. And sadly, she was wooed by that to the point to where he killed her.
Stephanie died during an overnight family visit at Mule Creek State Prison. She was there visiting her husband, David Brinson, sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole for killing 4 men in a Los Angeles robbery in 1994.
A few details on that 1994 or 93 conviction, sometimes in the 90s. I saw different articles. One said 94, one said 93. But this one goes, court records obtained by the LA Times show that Brinson is serving 4 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole after a 93 conviction for the 4 people he murdered during the robbery. I read elsewhere that those murders were execution style, and he committed them when he was 18. He was trying to get some kind of a release in recent years because he was convicted as a minor or as a young person. And again, make sure you stick around because this whole situation with this California Department of Corrections gets even worse.
She liked this guy and she trusted him. And, unfortunately, it was her demise.
According to the Amador County Sheriff's and CDCR, at some point in the middle of the night during their November visit, Brinson called the prison staff to say Stephanie passed out. 2 weeks later, her family was told something seemed suspicious about the case.
Kind of suspected it was something weird going on because she was healthy.
Her children's fears realized. The Amador County coroner ruled it a homicide. Stephanie was strangled.
It's a very frustrating role because we know it was just him and her in the room, nobody else. No supervision, no phones. They take her phone, they take all her belongings. So what hope does she have to, her life is in his hands at that point.
And that's what gets me. Well, one thing, I don't know if they mentioned it here, and I don't recall if I mentioned it earlier, but they said that this incident happened in November. So 4 months and they're just figuring out that this was a homicide. And they're going to say later on that he still hasn't been charged, but then he with homicide yet. 4 months later, it's totally insane. And I say it all the time, y'all. California is crazy. That state, they have no rational thinking on almost any level. And man, my heart goes out to any of y'all that live there. I know a lot of people live there because they say it's a beautiful place to live, but their policies and their beliefs, ideology, godless to say the least, and just terrifying for the average citizen. They care more about the suspect, they care more about the inmate than they do the citizens. How are you going to have a situation with a guy with this kind of a criminal history able to have conjugal visits with no type of monitoring? I read somewhere that they have to, over the span of a 24 or 30-hour period, they have to reach out and let people know everything's okay 4 times in order to develop intimacy. But that's crazy in and of itself. Their standards are so low, and in their desire to be more humane, they put the average citizen at risk time and time again.
Her children want answers. Why an inmate with a violent history was allowed to have unsupervised visits at all?
Nuts.
We took those questions to CDCR. They say protocol is that visits are determined by conduct while incarcerated, not convictions.
Which is crazy. That doesn't play a factor. None at all. Absolutely nuts. Stupid is what it is.
Unless an inmate has suspended privileges due to disciplinary actions, are on death row, or are convicted for sex offenses.
We just want answers. What could be done, not even just for the sake of my mom, but for the future, for somebody else's mom, somebody else's wife.
So you can be a sex offender, you can be on death row, but a 4-time homicide convicted felon, now you're good. I just wonder what their standard is, like how they come to that conclusion that's the measure that we're going to use in order to determine who's safe to be with someone unsupervised.
Trying to make a change. There are no charges for Stephanie's death, and Brinson has not been named as a suspect. He has been moved, however, to a facility in Stockton.
4 months. 4 months and hasn't been named a suspect. But the coroner said it was she died by strangulation. Someone help me make sense of all this foolishness. But just when you think that case wasn't bad enough, and it is absolutely tragic, what only makes this worse, and which only makes the California Department of Corrections look even dumber, if that's even remotely possible, is this article right here. As we go on, they talk about Stephanie Dow, the woman who was murdered, who that video we just watched highlights. It references, this article says the second woman is strangled during an overnight visit at California prison. So Stephanie was the second woman. The other woman, it says right here, other victim, Tanya Thomas, and it's hard. I was struggling to find any articles in my brief search on the internet that goes into any details about this. They said she was also strangled during a family visit, conjugal visit. Amador County District Attorney Todd Rybee said in an interview Monday, the man she was visiting has been charged with murder in connection with her killing. Now, there's not much out there that I've seen. And if anybody has anything on this case, please share in the comments or please link it, because I would love to know more. I decided to dig a little deeper and see what I can find, and I found some additional information on the Tanya Thomas murder that took place at the prison as well. And here are some of the details. Thomas, the other victim, who was murdered earlier in 2024, was found unconscious on July 1st, right here in 2024, in a family visiting unit. Basically the same setup, same situation, where she was spending time with her domestic partner, Anthony Curry, officials said. So I don't even know if you have to be married in California in order to be able to get a hookup or something like that. Who knows? Curry, 48, is serving a life sentence for attempted second-degree murder with an enhancement of intentionally discharging a firearm causing great bodily injury. So he was already in there for a violent offense. They already stated that their previous charges, other than sex offender or someone on death row, doesn't matter. He was also sentenced to 13 years in prison for carjacking with an enhancement of using a firearm, a Department of Corrections spokesperson said. But now, due to this case, Curry has been charged with murder in connection with Thomas's death, but has not been arraigned, Reeby said. So there you go, a little bit more detail on the context of the Tanya Thomas murder. Keep this in mind. This is the same state that fights to put men, biological men who claim to be trans, in female prison facilities. You can't make this stuff up, y'all. Completely irrational in their thinking, in their thought processes, if you can even call it that. But again, this situation is and was completely avoidable. Both of them were. And I'm sure by the time this is all said and done, the family's going to get a boatload of money. Sadly, it's not going to bring their mom, their grandpa and grandma back, but maybe it could. Maybe California, maybe, and this is just a big hope, maybe they'll wake up and realize that we're not doing something right. But if you believe California is going to rehabilitate and start thinking rationally, I got a bridge in New York to tell you. Anyway, let me know what you think. Comment down below. If you appreciate content like this, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And before you go, check out this video right here that talks about the foolishness that goes on in the California Department of Corrections. Right here. Check it out.